Hello everyone and welcome to another video. I am Simply G and today I'm going to be talking about my first impressions of Prince Freya by Keiko Ishihara. So this is an ongoing action romance shoujo put out by Viz. It's currently being published in Lala DX with 4 volumes currently in Japanese. The story follows the titular Freya, who is a teenage girl who lives in this sort of European fantasy-esque world. She lives in the mountains with her mother in a very small town. She has 2 adoptive brothers who are biological brothers to each other. But her brothers have since left to serve the prince and the kingdom because there is trouble afoot with neighboring kingdoms. Freya herself is kind of the quote-unquote good girl. She's very sweet, very kind, a bit of a crybaby. And at the beginning of the story, we see her brothers coming back to the village, her very excited about this, her relationship with her mother. But they soon have to leave because the neighboring kingdom is trying to start a war, basically, and so they have to go back to their postings to help the Prince Edward, who's the young prince of this kingdom, in preventing bloodshed between these differing factions and these differing kingdoms. Little does Freya know that she is actually in the middle of a plot between these 2 factions. Her brothers were actually sent to collect her without her knowledge, to take her back to the castle, which they don't do. They care about her more than that. But she gets caught up in this whole thing anyway and ends up getting rescued by them. And is ultimately taken to the castle where she meets the Prince Edward, who she is a striking resemblance to, and he has been poisoned. It's unsure as to whether or not he will survive, and so she is it's expected that she takes his place, so if he dies, then no one will know and it will prevent war, and she will be able to lead the country in his place. Unfortunately, the prince does die pretty immediately afterwards. One of her brothers, who is a very high-ranking knight, is also killed, and so she is left in this situation with just her other adoptive brother, the royal family, and one other knight knowing the situation, and her having to become this inspiring young prince whom she never met before. She's pretty quickly thrown into this role and given this expectation of being this prince, and one of the other knights, the only other knight aside from her remaining brother, trying to basically teach her how to be this prince in order to survive basically the politics of internally within the castle and the kingdom, and the warring factions and the various people, leaders who may or may not want the prince to be around anymore. Now, this is a series that I had heard about from my good friend Ray from Whimsical Pictures, who is also the co-host of the podcast we have together. She had read this in Japanese and had said that it was pretty good, which made me quite interested in picking it up, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. It's not brilliant. I wouldn't say it's even necessarily anything other than perfectly cliche, but it does what it needs to do very, very well. If you're looking for something newer with this sort of fantasy setting, or I guess medieval or kingdom royalty setting, with a female lead who has to become has to pretend to be a new leader of whom she isn't, then it's exactly that. It's very good at what it does. It was enjoyable. I found the characters to be pretty interesting. The first volume, we are just really introduced to a bunch of characters, some of which die pretty immediately, some who don't. And it's got a predictability to it that I think may make people not enjoy it, or some people might find annoying. But again, I think it's perfectly in line for this type of story. If that is something that you're worried about or that you don't enjoy, then perhaps avoid this one. I don't think it'll really be too surprising as for how events go and how these characters develop and how the relationships between these characters develop. I think it'll be pretty expected. I do wonder as to how much of this series will be focused on action in the coming volumes. At 4 volumes, it is a relatively newer series without a huge amount of, I would presume, development so far. And I'd expect it to be a shorter series overall, probably closer in line to a Dawn of the Arcana comparatively to a Yona of the Dawn. I'd say if you're going into this knowing what to expect, knowing that this is more so a predictable, very of the numbers for this genre style of story, then you will enjoy this. If that's what you're looking for, I don't think you should go into this expecting a Yona of the Dawn, or even arguably a Snow White with the red hair. It's a smaller scale story, at least in this first volume. We have 3 characters really, and you know, the royal family and stuff, and villain characters, but it's not, I don't think it'll have the grand epicness of especially Yona, or the various other supporting characters that Snow White with the red hair does. It's kind of a, it's hard to compare to other shoujo within the Shoujo Beat line that is currently coming out within this genre, but it's good. It's very good at what it does. It's not reinventing the wheel, and it doesn't have to. This may not be a title that suits everyone, but if you are a fan of this style of story, I do think you will enjoy it. Let me know your own thoughts and feelings if you've read this, or if you're wanting to read it, if you haven't heard of it. I love reading your comments as always. In the description below is the link to my Twitter as is usual. Follow me on there if you're wanting to get in contact with me, especially. Also, if you enjoyed this video, I hope you consider subscribing. I do really appreciate it if you do. But those have been my first impressions, my initial thoughts on this first volume of Prince Freya by Keiko Ishihara. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next video. Bye till then.